Love incredibly tasty seafood? Welcome to Seafood 101, where we celebrate the journey from sea to market to table. For more than 100 years, Seattle has been the home of our commercial fishing industry and the North Pacific fishing fleet. Today, our industry has never been healthier. Seattle is the home of hundreds of fishing companies, shipyards, suppliers, and marine services. Fishing is the past, present, and future of the Pacific Northwest. If you love sustainably caught wild seafood, you've come to the right place. Visit PacificNorthwestSeafood101.com to check out all the delicious recipes, news, and upcoming events. Now here's what's on the menu for today's program.
So welcome to Seafood 101. I'm Jeremiah Karpowitz, Editorial Director of the National Fisherman Magazine. I'm here today with Andy Wenk, who is the Executive Director at Bristol Bay Regional Seafood Development Association. Andy, thank you for taking the time.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
So can you tell viewers a little bit about your organization, about the association?
Sure. So we're a fishermen's trade group, and we basically represent Bristol Bay commercial fishermen. And Bristol Bay has about 8,000 commercial fishermen. They live predominantly in Alaska, but also around the U.S. I believe we have fishermen that reside in 48 different states. And all of these men and women, come up to the bay each summer, have an amazing adventure, and harvest millions of salmon in doing so.
So these are people that aren't located in Alaska throughout the year, but really all across the country.
It's a mix. We have people that live in the communities in Bristol Bay. There's people that live elsewhere in Alaska. I think there's only like 3 boroughs and census areas in Alaska that don't have a Bristol Bay permit holder. It's kind of interesting to be a fisherman's organization for just a specific fishery, but this is a massive fishery. It's the world's most valuable, largest wild salmon fishery. And so we have about 1,400 different drift net boats, and then there's another 800 or so permits and people that harvest fish from the beach, what's called set nets. So we have people catching fish out out on boats in the water, and also catching it closer to shore.
Excellent. Can you talk a little bit about the fishing seasons and how that impacts that influx of people coming in and out?
Yeah, so our fishery starts up in June, and most people will get up there in maybe like mid-May, maybe a little bit later. They sort of start coming in May, those that are coming from outside the region. And then the fishing really gets going into late June, and it peaks around in early July. And salmon fishermen catch the salmon generally when they're coming back to spawn. And so that's, by its nature, it's a seasonal fishery. And for the most part, it tends to be done in late July, around the 25th or so. Sometimes it bleeds into early August, but yeah, it's an incredible frenzy of activity. And you've got fishery biologists that are keeping an eye on how much is being caught. You've got also biologists that are literally counting the numbers of fish going upstream, because it's really important that we have enough fish going up into the rivers so that they continue the populations and keep the resource strong. And Bristol Bay has been operating for since the 1880s, and so going on over 130 years. And most of that time it's been kind of following the same management structure, and so we've got a very good idea about how many fish need to go upriver to spawn to continue to have healthy and abundant runs. And we've actually seen some really large harvests in recent years, huge runs, and that's really encouraging, because a lot of other areas are seeing declining runs.
What's the economic impact of some of those big runs and that kind of frenzy that you just talked about?
It's pretty huge. This fishery directly creates over 14,000 jobs for fishermen, processing workers, management staff, and then there's also what are called tenders. So in Bristol Bay, because of the way the tides work, most of the fish is delivered to a tender vessel. And a lot of times you might see these types of vessels on the Deadliest Catch. They could be large crab vessels, 120 feet long or something. But the boats in our fishery are actually, by regulation, they can't be longer than 32 feet. So you've got all these 32-foot boats out there. Some of them are quite wide and deep, as you can imagine. But they'll deliver to tender vessels, and then those tender vessels will keep the fish cold and then deliver that to processing plants, where you've got several thousand other workers ready to process the fish, can it, freeze it. Some of it goes out fresh to markets around the world, and all of that adds up to an economic output of typically between $1 to $1.5 billion.
Sizable.
Including all the multipliers and things like that.
Wow. Can you talk a little bit about your environmental stewardship? What does that look like, either in terms of your guys' approach or maybe positions?
Yeah, so we're very proud of our the sustainability of our fishery and how we try to take care of the resource so that it takes care of us. The Alaska Department of Fish and Game has done a really great job. I think over its history, Alaska's really looked at as the gold standard when it comes to fishery management. But unfortunately, due to budget cuts in recent years, there's been some of those management activities that didn't have funding. So we've actually stepped in and subsidized some of those along with other industry groups to make sure that management is really robust, and we're working with as much information as possible. So sustainability and making sure that this resource is around for future generations. I mean, it's really job number one. As long as we have fish, we have a fishery, and we do our utmost to make sure that that sustainability is protected.
Excellent. I was going to end with asking you about your kind of top focus of the association, but it sounds like that sustainability is, as you just said, priority number one. So what are some of the other things that are top of the list for you guys?
Yeah, so also I would say at or near the top of the list, once we have the fish, we need to market it. And this fishery happens in Western Alaska, so a great way to sort of show the map of Alaska. I don't have a map behind me like you do, but everybody's always carrying a map of Bristol Bay on their right, or of Alaska on their right hand. So Bristol Bay, here's Southeast Alaska going up, and here's the Alaska Peninsula going out towards Dutch Harbor and the Bering Sea. Bristol Bay is this large bay right here in Western Alaska, and it's a very remote place. There's no roads there. You have to take a plane or a boat to get there. But amazing amount of fish, unlike anywhere else in the world. And like I say, thousands of people go there and harvest this bounty every year. And, it's really just tremendously healthy, as we know wild salmon is, but particularly sockeye. It's got a compound called astaxanthin, which is really good for just a whole range of bodily functions. But very tasty, and of course there's the adventure side of it too, and the story side of it. So what we do is we will work with marketing partners, and it could be grocery stores, it could be restaurants, it could be seafood distributors, could be folks in the media, to tell our story. I think consumers in general, they want to know where their food comes from, who harvested it, how they harvest it. Are those people being good stewards? Is it a high quality product? What's in it? And even on a product like canned salmon, which has been around for, probably close to 100 years, there's two ingredients: salmon and salt. And and really, I mean, it's interesting. We've had a lot of Zoom calls with different people, and I was on one with Chef Tom Douglas last week. And of course, what do you ask a chef? Well, how do you like to prepare Bristol Bay sockeye salmon? And he said an answer that I've heard over and over, which is, it really doesn't. It doesn't need much. You don't want to. You don't need to dress it up too much. Salt, pepper, you're good to go. So it's, I think, us in the RSDA and us as Bristol Bay fishermen, we feel really proud to be able to tell this story and share this fish really with the world. Because like I said about the huge harvest volume that we have, in recent years, it's been over 200 million pounds. So with that massive amount of volume, there's hundreds of, there's millions of consumers around the globe that get to enjoy Bristol Bay salmon.
Beautiful thing for everybody. Well, thank you, Andy. Where's the best place people can go to find out more about you or about the association? Is that a website or maybe on social?
Yeah, so people that want to find out more about our organization specifically can go to BBRSDA.com. But we also have a really great site called bristolbaysockeye.org, and that's really meant for consumers. It's got recipes, it's got cooking techniques. You can fisherman profiles, so you can meet some of the fishermen. And yeah, really, I mean, if you kind of want to get a flavor of some good recipes, I definitely say check that out, and you can learn a little bit more about our fishery as well. One of the things that we're not as involved in, but I'll just bring it up here because I know this is going out in the Pacific Northwest. This fishery is something that it's got a lot of fishermen from the Puget Sound area. There's a lot of roots there, between Alaska's fishing industry and Seattle certainly. And every year, if somebody's got sort of a strong back and a strong mind, there's places on boats to go up there and work. And you can probably reach out on Facebook. There's different, just search Bristol Bay groups and you'll find some of those. But yeah, I mean that, the fishery is always turning over, but by the same token, I've met a lot of captains who are second, third, even fourth generation. So it's really interesting to sort of see the mix, And the other interesting thing about this fishery is that because it is seasonal, you get, I think, just very interesting, highly capable people from all walks of life that come up there and do this. Because to succeed in Bristol Bay, you're not just a fisherman, you're also a mechanic, you're an accountant, you're working on your gear, you've got to be part biologist, and just there's so many different things that go into it that I think make it really, really rewarding for the people that do it.
Excellent. And yeah, great way to connect with and get plugged into that community. Well, excellent. Well, thanks so much for taking the time, and thank you for joining us for Seafood 101. You can hit subscribe to find out more info about recipes, shopping tips, and industry news.
Thank you for joining us for today's Seafood 101 program. Seafood 101 is sponsored by the Seattle Propeller Club with the Port of Seattle. It's presented by the Alaska Bering Sea Crabbers, Bristol Bay Regional Seafood Development Association, Freezer Longline Coalition, and the Groundfish Forum. Special thanks to National Fisherman Magazine and Pacific Marine Expo. Visit PacificNorthwestSeafood101.com to check out all the delicious recipes, news, and upcoming events. See you next time as we continue to celebrate the journey from sea to market to table. Cheers!